All right, we're ready for table time. How did you do? 100%, right? Okay, let's check it out. Question number 1. America was sought after initially by those fleeing religious persecution. Number 2, in the 1700s and 1800s, 2 revivals would take place known as the Great Awakening. Number 3, outside of the King of England, George Whitefield in the 1740s was the most well-known Englishman in America at that time. Do you enjoy the history? It's interesting, isn't it? Number 4, his preaching up and down the eastern seaboard led to a revival amongst all denominations, especially among the Baptists. Number 5, this revival led to a greater respect and cooperating between all denominations. Number 6, some argue that the evangelical movement of the 1740s played a key role in the development of democratic thought as well as belief in the free press, and that information should be shared unbiased and uncontrolled. Same meaning, right? Number 7, the Second Great Awakening began around 1800 and continued until the 1830s. One name that is associated with this revival at this time in America is Charles Finney. He brought the, and if you were watching the screen, I gave that one to you, sorry. Number 8, it was Finney's practice to pray for people in public by name. Number 9, he made it possible for women to testify and pray in public before mixed audiences. Number 10, when he held meetings in town, they were protracted over several weeks. How did you do?
Number 11, this revival took place in small chapels all across the East Coast as well as in large cities. Sorry, Don.
No, not a problem. Well, tonight I want to introduce to you a gentleman named David Stein. But I'm not sure that I can. Because he wasn't born David Stein. His birth name was Henry Haydad. Born in Alexandria, Egypt. January 27, 1935. And that's what they named him. Henry Haydad. He had 15 other aliases by the time he came to America and was known as David Stein. Why did he do that? He was an art forger. I looked it up to see how many times he was arrested, and Wikipedia says he was frequently arrested or was on trial for art forgery. Very interesting character, very talented character, brilliant young Frenchman, imitated the painting style of the modern masters, and was so good at it that at one point he even got the approval of Picasso, I believe it was. Let me get to the right screen. He sold to collectors as originals paintings that he painted himself of the masters. Picasso, Chagall, Modigliani, Klee, Braque, and others. Only one of those. And Picasso actually signed off on one of the paintings that it was his, that he had painted it when it was David Stein that had actually painted it. He was that good. I remember a time when Jeannie took me to a place for a date where you paint pictures. They put a picture up and the leader of the meeting tells you what to draw first, what to paint first, and you do that and you try to imitate it. None of us were good enough where we could imitate the masters, but it was fun. It's a fun thing to do. He was so successful in having one of his forged Picasso oil paintings authenticated that Picasso himself authenticated, said it was his own painting. It's not always easy to spot a fake, even for experts. And tonight we're going to look at a lot of different clues and information that you may need to look at a second time and come back to, but they are in the Bible to protect you from forgeries and from fakes. Satan is the greatest deceiver of all time. It's a given fact. He doesn't work openly for risk of being exposed. He works through other people, other powers and agencies. If he were an open enemy of God in truth, he wouldn't do that. He would make more progress by hiding it and making suggestions and creating doubt. He works undercover. sometimes masquerading in the very garb of religion, he ingeniously mixes truth and error to draw men away from the true worship of God. We are not alone in the struggle with the great deceiver. We are armed with some clues and some verses that tonight I hope are helpful to you. God arms us with warnings and insights so we need not be deceived. Let's start in Daniel 7, verses 2 and 3. Daniel says, I saw in my vision by night, and behold, the four winds of heaven were stirring up the great sea, and four great beasts came up from the sea, each different from the other. Revelation 17:15 says, the waters which you saw are peoples, multitudes, nations, and tongues. So frequently in prophecy, when you hear the term sea, it's talking about multitudes of people. That's what that's telling you. The waters which you saw are peoples, multitudes, nations, and tongues. The waters which you saw, emphasize that word, Daniel 7, verses 17 and 23. Those great beasts which are four kings which are to arise out of the earth. Daniel 7, 17 and 23. The fourth beast shall be a fourth kingdom on earth. One of the most important principles for understanding symbolic Bible prophecy is that each new vision assumes a knowledge of the previous vision. The prophetic book of Daniel uses the principle of repetition and enlargement. You remember the great metal man, the image that King Nebuchadnezzar saw first, and what it stood for? The image of metal represented nations, followed by beast representing nations in this new vision. So you look for parallels, and you look for the nations that are being referred to. Number one was Babylon, the head and shoulders in the image. Medo-Persia was number two, the shoulders and chest represent Medo-Persia. Then the third kingdom was Greece, and the fourth kingdom, the legs of iron, were Rome. And four great beasts came up from the sea, each different from the other. Daniel 7, verses 3 to 7. The first was like a lion and had eagle's wings, which would be representing Babylon. We'll talk more about that. And suddenly another beast, a second like a bear, Medo-Persia, Daniel 7, 3 through 7. It was raised up on one side and had three ribs in its mouth between its teeth. After this I looked, and there was another like a leopard. That would be the kingdom of Greece. And then number 4, first I'll finish the description, which had on its back 4 wings of a bird, indicated the speed and the 4 generals that were involved. The fourth animal that is in the vision is Daniel 7, 3 through 7. After this I saw in the night visions, and behold, a fourth beast, dreadful and terrible, exceedingly strong. It had huge iron teeth. It was devouring, breaking in pieces, and trampling the residue with its feet. It was different from all the other beasts that were before, and it had 10 horns. The first was like a lion and had eagle's wings, Daniel 7, 4. I watched till its wings were plucked off, and it was lifted up from the earth, and made to stand on 2 feet like a man, and a man's heart was given to it. Jeremiah 4:7, a lion has come up from his thicket, and the destroyer of nations is on his way. He has gone forth from his place to make your land desolate. The proud, arrogant king of Babylon, Nebuchadnezzar, envisioned his kingdom lasting forever. And when he saw that great image, he wanted to create a solid gold image to represent his kingdom lasting forever and not ending. Inscribed on bricks throughout the city were the words, "May it last forever." But it did not last forever. On October 13 of 539 BC, the Babylonian kingdom came to an inglorious end. That would be about 2,564 years ago this month that Babylon ended. Daniel 7:5, it was raised up on one side and had 3 ribs in its mouth between its teeth. 3 provinces represented by this, Lydia, Egypt, and Babylon. So it's a clue that represents what nation we're looking at in this animal representation. Daniel 7:6, After this I looked, and there was another, like a leopard, which had on its back 4 wings of a bird. The beast had also 4 heads, and dominion was given to it. Alexander the Great defeated Darius III of Persia in the Battle of Arbela in 331 BC. So in less than 12 years, the ruler of the most extensive empire in the world had ever known was over. Excuse me, I have a little trouble getting that up where I can see it. The leopard's 4 heads represent 4 divisions of Greece, the 4 generals that took Alexander the Great's place when Greece was destroyed. 4 kingdoms shall arise out of that nation, Daniel 8:22. Eventually 4 of Alexander's generals gained control of the Greek Empire. These 4 were greedy, ambitious men who struggled among themselves for territory and power. Each one whetted the sword against the other, and the empire went down in a tangle of strife. Picture of Alexander the Great. Eventually 4 of Alexander's generals gained control of the Greek Empire. And on June 22, 168 BC, at the Battle of Pydna, perished the empire of Alexander the Great, 144 years after his death. The 4th ferocious beast Daniel saw would next rise to power was different in a lot of ways. Extremely powerful, having enormous iron teeth that destroyed its prey. It would be a cruel, vicious power. A more fitting description of the rise and reign of the Roman Empire could hardly be found. Rome was more ruthless and brutal than any of the previous empires. But there is more to discover. Reading now from Daniel 7:8, I was considering the horns, and there was another horn, a little one, coming up among them, before whom 3 of the first horns were plucked out by the roots. Horns? What's it talking about? Representing kings. Daniel 7:24, the 10 horns are 10 kings who shall arise from this kingdom. A new power was to rise from pagan Rome. By AD 476, the barbaric tribes of Western Europe had largely destroyed the Roman Empire. 7 of these nations are traced down to modern Europe today. There in this horn were eyes like the eyes of a man, and a mouth speaking pompous words, Daniel 7:8. So if it's representing king, it's giving you characteristics of that king or that kingdom now, speaking pompous words. Eyes indicate intelligence. Mouth speaking pompous words indicates the attitude. Daniel 7:15, I, Daniel, was grieved in my spirit, and the visions of my head troubled me. The same horn was making war against the saints and prevailing against them, and shall speak pompous words against the Most High, and shall persecute the saints of the Most High. Pompous words against God himself, persecuting the saints of God himself. And shall intend to change times and laws. You see the picture of the 10 Commandments there broken and changed, the power thinking they had the ability to change the law of God. Daniel 7:21 through 25 says, then the saints shall be given into his hand for a time and times and half a time. It's one of those cryptic things that look very confusing at first when you wonder, what in the world is that talking about? What does it mean? Can you imagine? What kind of power would declare war against the saints of God and actually prevail over them for a period of time? This would be a power hostile to the truth and to God's people. This is an agent used by Satan to destroy God's followers on earth. Daniel 7:28, my thoughts greatly troubled me, and my countenance changed, but I kept the matter in my heart. Dreadful and terrible, exceedingly strong, and it had 10 horns. Daniel described the 4th beast or the 4th empire of Rome in that way. 10 kings who shall arise, Daniel 7:24. And the little horn came from among the 10 kings. Historians tell us that the division of Rome as an empire was completed by AD 476. Here's a list of the tribes. The Alemanni were the Germans, the Burgundians were the Swiss, the Franks were the French, the Lombards the Italians, Saxons the English, Suevi were the Portuguese, the Visigoths were the Spanish, and the three tribes that are extinct is the Heruli, the Ostrogoths, and the Vandals. And that was completed by AD 476. English historian Edward Elliot, in his book, Horae Apocalyptica, the following barbaric tribes overran the empire from AD 351 through 476, and it was completed then. Daniel 7:24, the 10 horns are 10 kings who shall arise from this kingdom. So if the fourth beast is representing pagan Rome, these 10 horns are representing the same thing that the 10 toes in the metal image were representing. The 10 kingdoms of Europe, 3 of it which became extinct as Rome was growing and overcoming them. Daniel 7:24, and another shall arise after them. He shall be different from the first ones and shall subdue 3 kings. Is how Daniel predicted that. Different in a lot of ways, actually, but he subdued 3 kings, replaced those 3 kingdoms with a new type of kingdom. How did it happen? The 3 adjacent kingdoms to the Italians were the 3 that went away. The Heruli in AD 493 met their fate with the help of Emperor Zeno. Another emperor, Justinian, exterminated the Vandals in 534 AD. And then Justinian broke the power of the Ostrogoths in 538. Thus the 3 horns of Daniel's prophecy were plucked up by the roots, making the rise of the little horn a reality. It was at this time that Justinian made a decree establishing the bishop or pope of Rome as the religious leader of what had been the Western Roman Empire. This was a new situation, as it marked the blending of the power of the church with the civil power of the state. Daniel 7:24, he shall be different from the first ones. The other kings, the other of the 10 kings, and the 7 remaining ones were not religious and political powers. Look at the differences here as it develops. The prophetic finger points undeniably toward the Roman Christian church of the Middle Ages as the little horn of Daniel chapter 7. Daniel 7:21, I was watching, and the same horn was making war against the saints and prevailing against them. Not only making war, but wearing them out, it says. The inquisitions against groups such as the Huguenots, the Waldenses that we've been seeing about in lineage, and the Albigenses with the use of torture and various methods of execution are an undeniable part of church history. Wear out the saints, Daniel 7:25. You ever feel that way? That the enemy, the world, the evil in the world is wearing you out? Hundreds were burned at the stake. We don't have it that bad, do we? For not going along with the practices or teachings of the state church. Daniel 7:25. They intended to change times and laws. What times and laws did the Church of Rome attempt to change? We've talked about one of them, Sabbath to Sunday. According to its own claims, it changed the Sabbath from Saturday to Sunday. It did this not upon any express command from Scripture, but with an appeal to its own authority and to tradition as being more powerful than the truth of God's Word. Daniel 7:25, then the saints shall be given into his hand for a time and times and half a time. Let's look at that a little bit deeper to help give you an initial understanding of it, and I recommend you study this again to make sure you get the principles. Ezekiel 4:6, I have appointed thee each day for a year. I'm going to talk about prophetic time and show you some formulas here. One time equals 360 days in the Jewish calendar. 360 prophetic days. So, Time equals 1 prophetic year, 360 prophetic days. Times equals 2 prophetic years, 720 prophetic days. And a half a time equals 180 prophetic days. And if you put that into the prophetic expectation, 1,260 prophetic days equal 1,260 literal years. Now think just a moment again. In 538, the Pope, the Bishop of Rome, was set up as the leader of the church, the nation, all in one. 538 AD. So that 1,260 years would take you to what year?
1798.
1798 was 1,260 years later, and something significant happened in 1798. Berthier's general, or Napoleon's general, Berthier, I should say, came and took the Pope captive in 1798. The math works out to the same time period as is stated in 5 other places in Daniel and Revelations. Sometimes it's described in other words, but the formula still comes out to the same 1,260. It's called 3.5 years, which is 3.5 prophetic years, which is 1,260 days. Sometimes it's 42 months, same number. And elsewhere it's 1,260 days. But the proof is in the fact that from 538 to 1798, that number brings us to a prophetic event that God predicted to show us as a clue so we wouldn't be fooled by a fake. Each of these passages predict the same thing. This persecuting power would be dominant for 1,260 years. But at the end of that time, in 1798, the Pope would be arrested and the power of the church was broken. The last of the 10 horns to oppose the Roman Church, the Ostrogoths, were overthrown in AD 538, making the Bishop of Rome the unchallenged leader of what had been the Western Roman Empire. And exactly 1,260 years later, in 1798, the Roman Church's political power was visibly ended by Napoleon's general Berthier. So let's give you a couple more clues, 7 actually. 7 clues to help you unmask the little horn, to help you be confident that this analysis is correct. Number 1 of the 7 clues, they will be among the 10 European powers of Western Rome. So Italy was among the 10 European powers of Western Rome. Number 2, among the 3 uprooted horns, they were adjacent to the 3 uprooted countries. They surrounded Italy, the ones closest to them, and the ones that had a specific belief that made it harder for them to be compatible with Rome. The Heruli, the Ostrogoths, and the Vandals were Arian in their beliefs and refused to accept the Pope as the head of the church. Number 3 clue is established after 476 AD. Number 4, they were both a political and a religious power. So it fits that criteria. Daniel 7:21. I was watching, and the same horn was making war against the saints and prevailing against them. Clue number 5, wear out the saints, prevailing against them, wearing out the saints, being very hard on them. Number 6, think to change times and law. This power would think they could change the law of God, change times and dates, and make changes they didn't have the authority or power to do. In other words, this church would assume the right to change God's times and his commandments. And number 7 clue, they would persecute the saints for 1,260 years. You can see by these characteristics that there is only one power in history that arose at the right time, in the right place, to fulfill all of these predictions. This is the Roman Catholic Church, a system that developed in medieval times, a system that allowed human traditions and ideas to be substituted for the truth of God's Word. But the story doesn't end with the prophecy of the falling away from the faith. There's hope. There's glory. Read this. Rather, Daniel foresaw a very happy ending for the people of God. After watching the powers on earth struggle for political and religious dominance, Daniel's attention was suddenly shifted from earth to heaven. He says in Daniel 7, 9, and 10, I watched till thrones were put in place, and the Ancient of Days was seated. The Ancient of Days. That's an interesting phrase. God the Father, the Ancient of Days, was seated on his throne, and Daniel watched. His garment was white as snow, and the hair of his head was like pure wool. His throne was a fiery flame, its wheels a burning fire. A fiery stream issued and came forth from before him. 1,000 thousands ministered to him. I always like to ask, do you know how many that is? 1,000 thousands? That's 1,000,000. 1,000,000 angels. Read the next verse. 10,000 times 10,000. How many is that? That's 100 million. That's a lot of angels. The court was seated, and the books were opened. Daniel 7, 9, and 10. The court was seated, and the books were opened. Can you imagine that scene? Have you ever been in a courtroom, and they open the book? They bring charges against you. But did you have 100 million witnesses? Daniel saw God the Father, here called the Ancient of Days, come and sit upon a glorious throne. This is all in preparation for the final scenes of this struggle for earth's dominion. Daniel 7:26. But the court shall be seated, and they shall take away his, in other words, the little horns, dominion, and to consume and destroy it forever. I was watching in the night visions, and behold, one like the Son of Man, coming with the clouds of heaven. One like the Son of Man. Jesus liked to use that title to describe himself when he was here on earth. So when Jesus came, he came to the Ancient of Days, and they brought him near before him. Think of Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane. And Judas comes to him and kisses him. And he asks a question. Friend, are you betraying the Son of Man with a kiss? Makes you think about what we are doing as Jesus applied that question to us. Daniel 7:10. The court was seated and the books were opened. Jesus, our advocate, our lawyer, is there to represent us, to answer the charges, to say whether we have been forgiven, whether we've made that decision to accept him. Daniel 7:14. Then to him was given dominion and glory and a kingdom. This is talking about Jesus. Then to Jesus was given dominion and glory and a kingdom, that all peoples, nations, and languages should serve him. Daniel 7:14 again. His dominion is an everlasting dominion which shall not pass away, and his kingdom the one which shall not be destroyed. Daniel 7:27. The kingdom and dominion shall be given to the people, the saints of the Most High. The saints of the Most High shall receive the kingdom and possess the kingdom forever, even forever and ever. Do you get that? He's given the kingdom and he's sharing it with us. We shall receive it with him. That's amazing that he shares it with us. We're living in the last chapters of Earth's history. Daniel's vision is nearly entirely fulfilled. Only the completion of the judgment remains. And with it, the reuniting of the God of heaven with his children, whom he loves more than anything. And he was willing to come here to prove it. Aren't you grateful for that? And it's table time. Let's see if you got any of those answers. Question number 1. The prophet Daniel himself had a dream of beasts rising up out of the sea. I saw in my vision by night, Daniel wrote, and behold, the 4 winds of heaven were stirring up the great sea, and 4 beasts came up from the sea, each different from the other. Daniel 7, 2, and 3. Revelation 17:15 says, the waters which you saw are peoples, multitudes, nations, and tongues. The angel told Daniel, these great beasts, which are 4 kings which arise out of the earth. The 4 beasts shall be a 4th kingdom on earth. Daniel 7, 17, and 23. Number 4. After this I saw in the night visions, and behold, a 4th beast, dreadful and terrible, exceedingly strong. It had huge iron teeth. It was devouring, breaking in pieces, and trampling the residue with its feet. It was different from all the beasts that were before it, and it had 10 horns. Number 5, the first was like a lion and had eagle's wings. I watched till its wings were plucked off, and it was lifted up from the earth and made to stand on 2 feet like a man, and a man's heart was given to it. Daniel 7:4. Number 6, I was considering the horns, and there was another horn, a little one, coming up among them, before whom 3 of the first horns were plucked out by the roots. And there in this horn were eyes, like the eyes of a man, and a mouth speaking pompous words. Daniel 7:8. Question 7, I was watching, and the same horn was making war against the saints and prevailing against them. Daniel 7:21. Question number 8. In AD 493, the Heruli met their fate with the help of Emperor Zeno. Another emperor, Justinian, exterminated the Vandals in 534, and then broke the power of the Ostrogoths in 538. Thus the 3 horns of Daniel's prophecy were plucked up by the roots, making the rise of the little horn a reality. Question number 9. The other kingdoms were political powers, but the little horn would be a church that wielded political power. The prophetic finger points undeniably toward the Roman Christian church of the Middle Ages as the little horn of Daniel, chapter 7. Let's read through these one more time. You'll need to hear this more than 1 or 2 times. You'll need to study it and make yourself comfortable with it. A time equals 1 prophetic year, which equals 360 prophetic days. Times would be 2 times that. 2 prophetic years equals 720 prophetic days. And a half a time would be half of 1 year, which would be 180 prophetic days. You add those together, you get 1,260 prophetic days, which in a prophecy equals 1,260 literal years. Principle from Ezekiel 4:6 says, I have appointed thee each day for a year. You have any extra questions this time around? No. Survey card. This is episode number 17. Yes.
I do. It says 1 year equals 360 prophetic days. Why is there not 365?
The Jewish calendar has 360 days in a
I
year.
didn't know that.
Okay. I didn't either before somebody taught it to me, so thanks for asking. Let's move on. Episode number 17. Statement A. Water is the prophetic word for people, multitudes, nations, and languages. If you believe that statement is true, circle A. Statement B. Beast is code for a king or kingdom. Circle B if you agree with that statement. C. We are living in the end of time. Circle C if you believe that is true. And D. I would like to be baptized and ready to meet Jesus. Circle D if that's true for you.